Monday Morning House Calls, sponsored by UK Healthcare.
And welcome back to Mountain News this morning. Today we are being joined by Dr. Tina Stutes. She is with UK's Department of Health Behavior. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks for
We're here talking about early childhood behavior problems. And I think, all kids act up. I mean, that's just part of being young. I did it. I'm sure you did it too. But how does a parent of a young child know if they need to be concerned about their child's behavior problems?
That's such a good question, and it's so true that all kids have behavior problems at some point or another. And with little kids, it's especially hard to tell. So preschool age kids between the ages of 3 and 5, it's really typical for them to not follow directions or to be aggressive, not share, have tantrums. But when those behaviors seem to be outside the typical range of what you would see in a developing child, and it's causing some sort of impairment or hurting the quality of life of the parent or the family or the child, and if it's occurring across settings, like if it's at home, but also at daycare, also out in public or at church or at the grocery store, and parents are really struggling to get a hold on it, then that's typically a red flag that there might be behavior problems that are in excess of what you would normally see. And statistically, about 1 in 10 kids have what's actually a diagnosable behavior problem, even at that early age of 3 to 5. But more like 2 to 3 kids are at risk, like have high enough levels of behavior problems that they're actually at risk for a longer trajectory of behavior problems throughout school and even into adolescence and adulthood.
So what specific behavior problems are we looking at? I guess the obvious thing that people are thinking is probably something along the lines of ADHD, but surely there are other things that
there are definitely others. And ADHD is a little bit separate from the kind of behavior problems that I'm talking about. So maybe less impulsivity or inattention, but things like aggression, defiance to authority, not following directions, hurting others, stealing. These are things that we even do see sometimes in really young children that you wouldn't think that you would see those sorts of things quite as early.
So do preschool age children tend to grow out of this kind of thing?
So many do, which is really good news. Most kids who have behavior problems that are typical in that age of development will grow out of them, even by the time they start kindergarten. But there's a really strong research base that shows that kids who have high levels of behavior problems in early childhood are at really high risk of this developing trajectory over time that results in things like school failure and dropout, drug use, juvenile justice involvement in adolescence, and really negative outcomes in the long term. So most parents whose kids are diagnosed or identified as having emotional and behavioral problems in late elementary school or even middle school can look back and recognize those warning signs in their child at the age of 3. So we know that some kids won't outgrow them without intervention.
So finally then, what can parents do to help kids who have these problems?
So that's kind of the kicker. So probably the best thing that parents can do is consult with their child's primary care physician, a pediatrician or family physician who can refer to local resources. Kentucky River Community Care, other community mental health resources are good. We know that there are really effective programs available, mostly that are not delivered well in communities in the real world. And so one of the things we're doing is partnering with the Center of Excellence in Rural Health to do a study to investigate what parents' preferences are, how we could actually best get a really good, effective, evidence-based intervention into communities like this.
All right. Thanks for joining us, and Mountain News This Morning continues in just a moment.